So this tutorial is a Photoshop tutorial of how to create this kind of half skull or half animal, whatever you want to use, mixed with a portrait. So it's really about blending two different images together. So the first thing you need to do is you need to make sure that you've saved all of the components as JPEGs. So I've got a portrait here, I've got a skull that I've selected, and then I've got this kind of robotic element which I'm going to put into her eye. This could be for Terminator, it can be for loads of different movies. So the first thing that I want to do is obviously to open up my Photoshop, and this is going to be skull face, and then I'm going to just go to centimeters, and I'm going to have about 30 centimeters by 40 centimeters for my poster design. Okay, so once I've opened that up, I'm going to go to File, I'm going to go to Open, and I'm going to open all of my different elements. So on different tabs here, you can see that I've got my portrait and I've got my skull. So I'm going to go to my portrait to start off with. I've just unlocked it by double clicking on the little padlock, and I'm going to get this arrow tool. I'm going to press it, I'm keeping my finger down, I'm dragging it up over the top of my original layer, keeping my finger on it. Oh, was it this one? And then I'm going to let go. So my portrait is now on my poster design. Depending on what size it is, I'm going to need to go to Control and T, or Edit and Free Transform, or if you're on a Mac it's Command and T, and I'm going to drag it out, keeping my finger on Shift to rescale it. Okay, so I've now got my rescaled portrait. The next thing I want then is I want my skull on the same page. So I don't need her anymore. I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to go to my skull. Again, I'm going to unlock it, clicking on your padlock, get your arrow key, pressing down, keeping your finger on it as you drag it up, hovering over your tab, bringing it down, and then letting go. So now I want to kind of position this so that it's in the right place. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to change the opacity so that I can see through it and I can position it a little bit better. And then once I've done that, I'm going to go to Control and T again so that I can rescale. This time I'm not going to keep my finger down on Shift because I do want it to distort a little bit to fit in with her face, but I don't want it to look really unrealistic. So I need to be really careful about how I'm kind of pulling it out. The bits that I want is I want her kind of chin, nose and mouth to be the bits that are aligned, along with some cheekbones, because they're the bits that I'm going to be using. So once you're happy with that kind of alignment, you can then go and click on OK, and then you can move the opacity all the way back up to 100. So the next thing that I'm going to do now then is I'm going to create a layer mask on top of this to get rid of all the bits that I don't want. So just down the bottom here, I'm going to create a layer mask. And layer masks work by creating an extra piece of screen, I guess, and make sure that you've got black selected when you want to erase something and white selected when you want to add it. So I'm going to go to my paintbrush tool, and the first thing that I'm going to do then is I'm going to blend the bits in that I want. So I'm going to go to quite a hard brush, and I'm basically going to be deleting away. My opacity is quite low, so I'm going to be deleting the bits that I know I definitely am not going to be using. So I don't want it to be around her face. I'm not going to be using that, and I'm actually going to change my brush to a softer brush, maybe a little bit more opaque, as I go to kind of blend it around so it's not such a harsh line. So I'm starting to kind of blend these bits in without such a hard eraser. Now at the moment, it's still quite blocked here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a specialized brush. I think I've deleted a little bit too much here. I'm going to go up a little bit. Otherwise it's not going to be as effective. There we go. So I don't want to delete as much as I did. If you haven't got this tab to allow you to go back and forward through history, just go to Windows and History. And again, if you haven't got this tab, Windows and Layers will allow you to select that. Right, okay, so that's a little bit better. So I'm just blending it in a little bit more and making it a little bit higher. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get a specialized brush, which is a scatter brush. So the type of brushes that I've got here, there's lots of different types. So I'm going to choose a scatter brush, which is here. Okay, so once I've selected my scatter brush, I'm going to just increase the size. So that's your squared off brackets that will change your size, so smaller or bigger, or you can obviously just drag it on. So I'm going to increase it there, and then what I'm going to do when I'm on my layer mask is I'm just going to start to delete bits like this around the eye. So as you can see, it's now starting to kind of blend in a little bit more, so it looks like it's kind of naturally transforming from her face into the skull rather than just deleting. I could do a similar sort of thing around the hair. It might be that you want more hair than black, or you might want more black than hair. That's completely up to you, and it's dependent on what you erase. So I end up with this kind of blended thing here. So I'm just going to zoom in for you to be able to see. So now I think that she's maybe a little bit too light. So I'm going to go back to her, and I'm going to use this tool here, which is called a burn. So burn is to darken, and dodge is to lighten. So I'm going to go to the burn, and I'm going to darken a little bit around her kind of eyes. And make her have a little bit more contrast in this area. So as you can see now, the eyes are starting to darken. It might be that you darken the skin under where you kind of picked it up from, give a little bit of shadow. And it's completely up to you what you darken. I might want to darken her hair a little bit to mix it in at the bottom. And I'm just adding here a little bit more contrast, adding some darker areas. Right, so once I've done that, I'm going to develop it further by adding a kind of mechanical element. So I am going to find my piece of machinery. Where was that? That was on here. And I'm going to copy it, or you can go to File and Open if you've already saved it. So my machinery now, I'm just going to drag it to the top, and this is it. So what I want is I want that to go instead of my eyeball. So I'm going to go to my magic wand, I'm going to go to the black bit, and I'm just going to delete all of the outside of it. And then I'm going to go to Control and deselect. So Control and D. And that will get rid of all of my selection. Then I'm going to drag it on top of my eyeball. So I'm going to Control and T, which will allow me to resize, and using my shift button, I'm dragging it down now so that I can rescale it over my eyes. I'm going to change the opacity so that I can see where my eyeball is here, and if you need to zoom in, then zoom in to do that. So I can see here it's maybe a little bit too big, and it's probably there over my eyeball. So I'm going to zoom in now, so I can see. Oh, and you zoom in by going Control and your plus sign. And then I'm going to get my, oh, I think it's actually probably a little bit big. Let me just go back onto my layer. And then I'm going to get my eraser tool, and I'm going to erase the bits that I wouldn't see because they are behind her eyelids. Okay, there's many different things you can do as well. If you don't want her to have a blue eye, for instance, you could draw a circle. You could then add a new page, and on that page you could get your paint bucket tool, and you can choose whatever colour you want her to have. So I don't know, I could have like a goldeny colour, and then you can have it a bit more opaque, however you want it. So I'm just going to select inside there, and then I'm just going to go to deselect. At the moment it's probably not in the right place, so I'm just going to go to Command and T to allow me to move it. It's a little bit dark and unrealistic, so I'm just going to change the opacity, and then again I'm going to get my eraser tool. I'm going to erase out my pupil. I'm going to erase along the edge here, and then again I could add a little bit of shadow to that, so I'm going to go to my burn tool, And I'm just going to make the top of my eye a little bit darker so that it's a bit more like this. So to zoom out for you, you can have a look at how I've started to kind of develop that. Okay, so I'll leave you to do the rest, but that is how I would create my half skeleton or half animal, whatever